Okay. All right. Tonight we are honored to welcome Ben Cake, a seasoned expert in copywriting, branding, and advertising. Our focus will be on enhancing our product and personal branding, sharpening our copywriting skills, and ultimately securing lucrative licensing deals and improving communication with potential licensees. Ben's session promises to be packed full of insights, offering us the chance to dive into the nuances of effective communication. We will be exploring strategies to elevate our branding and copywriting, practical tips for securing better licensing agreements, real-world before and after copy examples, and some live tweaking of marketing materials for immediate impact. Before we dive in with Ben, a quick reminder to stick around until the end. We will have some exciting updates and upcoming programming information about the Innovators Roundtable sessions that you won't want to miss. So feel free to mute yourselves or stay unmuted, but please keep background noise to a minimum. So no blenders, no vacuum cleaners, but do stay engaged. Your contributions and questions are what makes these sessions truly valuable. So about Ben Cake. Ben has carved a unique path through the world of copywriting and branding. His journey began in New York, where he contributed his talents to Esquire magazine, played a pivotal role as a contributing copy chief for several Condé Nast publications, and served as a freelance copy editor for Penguin Random House. In 2016, Ben embraced a new challenge and relocated to Tennessee, diving headfirst into branding and advertising. Over the past 8 years, Ben has been instrumental in launching websites and boosting engagements across print, digital, radio, and television ads for an array of startups and agencies. So we're set for an informative and engaging session. Your takeaways from tonight could very well be the game changer in your next project or pitch. So let's make the most of this opportunity to learn from one of the best in the business. So without further ado, again, welcome everybody. I see a few more people popped on while I was doing that. So welcome everybody. And Ben Cake, where would you like to begin?
Well, first of all, thank you for the warm welcome and this kind of walk down memory lane of a 20-year career. I think it's probably about 20 years that I've known you too. So
in fact, so it is. Yes.
It's a nice remembrance of that. So I think that to start just with that bio, kind of going from traditional journalism and then shifting into branding around 2016, which was also a time when social media was kind of really changed political discourse, the way news was distributed, the way people were kind of launching their own companies and going direct to consumer. And the 8 years since then, we've seen that more and more people have had to kind of create their own little media empires, or companies are hiring entire in-house teams to build out their own media teams to function as basically their own representation. And that has kind of changed the way things were, the way communication has occurred, and really allowed people to go around media. For a long time, it was working with PR companies, trying to get placement in stories. And now that you can kind of go directly to people, it's changed the way people talk. And you've seen this gravitation more towards conversational, people building their own brands, people trusting individuals or influencers more than, say, a traditional outlet. And so I think all of those will kind of factor into the way we're talking to potential clients, to potential licensee or licensors. And I've talked about this a lot, but I've never kind of worked with a crowd of inventors. So first of all, I want to open the table to say, at any time, if I'm talking more about something that's esoteric, just copywriting, feel free to pull me back or ask me a question, redirect me. I'd like this to be a conversation. And so with that said, I guess I'd like to try to level set with you guys and and say kind of what I see the goal. I think that whenever you're trying to build a communication strategy, you kind of have to focus on a main priority, which in your case, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is to either sell or lease your idea to a licensor, both to make money, but also to mitigate the risk of having to do it yourself and to
Right.
just have the achievement of the satisfaction that comes with having something you dreamt up out in the world.
Right. Right.
And so there are some specific challenges that would come with a mission like that. And I want to kind of address those because they shape your strategy as well. The first is that the licensor's goal or the buyer's goal, if this is kind of akin to, say, somebody trying to sell a screenplay, which is, it's an idea, but the production and the hiring and all of the things that go into execution is not necessarily your risk or your burden. So,
Right.
their first goal is to say no.
Mm.
And that's kind of dispiriting, but you have to kind of, I think that it helps to get out of your own head and say, well, they want to say no because they're worried about risk, and
Right.
saying no always feels safer. And
Right.
so the goal, as you kind of address that, first of all, it helps to kind of understand that if you're not seeing huge numbers or you're not getting great responses, sometimes it's just that it's not that there's something off with your invention or your product, or so that's just something to come with the territory.
Mm-hmm.
A second thing to recognize is that an idea for a product is not a product. So you
Mm-hmm.
actually have two jobs. You're simultaneously selling the idea and then also selling the product as it would function. You have to speak to both how the idea would work for the licensor and how the product would speak to the customer, and to try to keep those distinct so that they don't blur with your messaging. Because if you try to hit people who've never kind of encountered your product or anything like that, you're going back and forth between the two, it can get confusing, or it can become a lot. It can become overwhelming. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, so and so to kind of talk about the idea portion of that, a decision maker can't necessarily immediately calculate the return on investment of an idea.
Mm-hmm.
There's manufacturing issues, there's supply chain issues, there's a host of issues that they're not going to necessarily have the information for. And in that research, I don't know how you guys talk about this issue in other meetings, but if you've done that research, that's great. And it can kind of help you move things along by saying, production costs could be about this, I've researched this and stuff like that. But you want to tier that information, because Jen, before we kind of got into this, was like, how long should a message be and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I think as we go on, I'll kind of create a higher, what are the first messages to give, and
Yeah.
then what is the supporting information, and how to kind of parcel that out
Yeah. And
over
even,
an ongoing conversation or through a communication.
and I'm sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. I wanted to add, even starting from like the initial outreach, how to draft the subject line or the body of the email or the message to get the attention of the person, just like from the very beginning before you even start with the product. So
Yeah, do you want me to jump into that while that's
sure. Yeah. Yeah. What can you,
while you cut it up so that we don't forget, and we can.
yeah,
So
we
yeah,
can
so I guess what I
start.
wanted to give was an example of yeah, go ahead. Where do you
I'm
want to
sorry.
start?
There's a bit of a delay, Ben. We're dealing with a bit of a
Oh,
delay. I was going to say that we could start with the fact that I wanted to title this meeting "How to Turn Your Dog into a Cat," which you promptly vetoed. And I don't know if you want to go with that as an entry into this conversation or not. But if you have a different example, you could use that too.
So they're lay on my side as well. The why, so kind of reverse engineer why I changed the how to change a dog into a cat.
Yeah.
Or I think that yeah, why I changed that. And so you guys all saw the invitation, and it kind of came up with, or Jen came up with some lines, I came up with some lines, and that was just kind of the process in and of itself. And I thought that how to change a dog into a cat was ambiguous to me. It could seem, especially when you talk about marketing, a lot of people's outside associations are somebody who's slick or somebody who's changing perception. There's kind of this televangelist vibe to it, or somebody that's misleading somebody. And so to me, I've never been about spin. And so how to turn a dog into a cat, I understood kind of, I understood different references to it. And I kind of liked the element of some of the accessibility of that, but I also didn't want to give the impression that it was, we're re-spinning the truth, or going to teach you how to create kind of a magic show with words and misrepresent something, or and so that was my initial impression, because the way I've always kind of done things, there are people who do that, and to some degree you see that a lot with we'll see it in an example, but a lot of gurus will talk about unleashing the power within, or or things like that, and they offer kind of a fantasy that they can't be responsible for or back up in any way, and so they sell a fantasy, and then ultimately they give a course or something like that, and they bear no responsibility for the outcome for people. And so I've always kind of built my business around really kind of trying to deal with tangible things. And that was basically the origin story of how we landed on the title. But I think you talked about, you kind of wanted to get to subject lines. And because we're talking about ideas and things that have different levels of execution, I kind of wanted to create a bridge with writing a screenplay or something like that. And I've done that myself, and had to send work that I've spent 3 to 5 years on to a person who's never met me before. And there's this huge sense of vulnerability. And I think, like an invention, you tend to hold this work close to the vest because other people could make it, or something along those lines. And some subject lines that worked for me at that time. What I can say is that if you are getting connected by another person, that's the only time I think name dropping is okay. If someone has introduced you to or made a connection with another licensor, put that name in the subject line. Ted Emerson thought you'd be a great person to talk to about my product, or whatever it is, because it creates this social sense of, oh, well, like, if he knows Ted, and Ted knows me, and I like Ted, I'm going to open the email and basically show courtesy here at the least. Or I love Ted, and he's turned me on to some great things. So I'd say that's one really great way to get an open. Another way is, if you can't personalize it that way, I've done this, and I think that something along these lines works. Is, if you were to say I had an invention, the subject line, you were the one person I thought of after I developed this product. Something like that, where it is a direct address, it's conversational, and it's making them feel like a priority, that they were the first person. Now, if it's not the first person, you don't have to lie. You can say, you were one of the first people I thought of, or something like that. But what it does is it makes them feel tailored. And then I would actually tailor the message to it. Like, as the person who runs X company that has launched X, Y, and Z that I admire, I thought this would fit into your, your product range or something along those lines. It shows that you've thought about them, that you've done that kind of research, and that that there's a reason why. And basically the subtext becomes, oh, this is not a crazy person. This is a person who's done some research, developed a product, understood comps or the industry, and all of a sudden you're gaining credibility just by providing context for why you reached out to that person. And those are all good things. Another option, and I've used this with a book query when I sent a novel to an agent, and I just wrote, I spent the past 5 years composing this email, and that was the subject line, and then the letter was, because I've been rehearsing it as I've written this novel. And then it became kind of this segue to kind of show what I've put into it. And when you see a subject line, what, he spent 5 years composing an email, like, just out of curiosity, he's going to say, hey, like, I got to see. And it's actually funnier if it's super short, right? Because they're like, what? Well, it's only 2 sentences or something like that. But like, you can definitely play with expectations with subject lines and body messages like that. I wouldn't necessarily do it the other way of just a quick question and then it's like a 20-page email. I think that would probably be a pump fake they're not ready for. But the other way around, it is helpful.
And how were those messages received?
You know, the one did lead to getting an agent. So that was positive. I think that they're all received in different contexts. Some agencies or some, I don't know, organizations actually have, I guess, like protocol for, like, if you're submitting a project, use this subject line or something like that. And you don't want to get clever. Just follow the rules if there are rules, or if there are industry standards. You don't want to necessarily break out because you're trying to differentiate yourself that way. If there is a protocol, certainly follow it. But I've had some good luck with that. And it kind of leads into, I think, a bigger universal principle is that write your messages if you're writing to one person. If there's someone, a friend or a colleague or someone who you've shared your product with, who gets it and likes it and is supportive, actually write as if you're writing to that person, because you want that sense of goodwill, you want that kind of confidence, and it also helps you just kind of make it not feel like a form letter. I think that you can definitely tell, oh, this guy's copied and pasted this message 100 times, and it can actually create it kind of creates this sense of like, this guy's playing a numbers game. He hasn't done the research for me. He's just kind of doing this scattershot approach and seeing what sticks. And so I think that, and that can be alienating, because a lot of these people get pitches all day for a living. So I think the more sincere it is and the more personalized it is, and the more it feels like a direct address, all those things will benefit you. So that was kind of subject line stuff. I wanted to kind of go back to one other challenge that I saw, and you guys can kind of agree or maybe raise some questions, is the more original your idea is, the more difficult it's going to be to talk about. And that's a challenge. Innovators want to do something different. They want to address problems or solve problems or move the ball forward in certain categories. And so there is a real value in being different, but the more different it is, it can take more context or or more techniques to kind of make it accessible to somebody who's hearing it for the first time. And to kind of emphasize just how important that principle is there was a study done at Stanford in the early 90s where they took two groups of subjects and they told one group they had to tap the rhythm to a song. And it was they were very familiar songs. Like it was Happy Birthday or the Star Spangled Banner. And they had one group who were the tappers who had to tap, and then the other group was the listeners who had to try to listen. And out of 120 groups, only 3 people guessed right. And these tappers were like beside themselves. They're like, how do you not know this is Happy Birthday? And I think that as an inventor or as a writer or somebody like that, who's held on to an idea and workshopped it over a long period of time, you hear that song, but that doesn't necessarily mean the listener is going to get it right away. And so a big part of the process is actually trying to get out of your own head and be able to explain something to someone in a way that they're absolutely going to get it. And I think that your first goal is to be able to kind of engage in the exercise of how can I say this in the simplest possible terms? Maybe I need an analogy or a metaphor. Like take, for instance, I think most of you are familiar with the movie Speed, right? There was a bomb on the bus. Once it went over 55 miles per hour, it was going to explode if it went below 55 miles per hour. And so the whole movie was basically this bus that couldn't go below 55 traveling through downtown Los Angeles as these people tried to negotiate with the terrorists. So that's a synopsis, right? When it was originally pitched, the writer said, what if we did Die Hard, but in a bus?
Mm.
And it's so much more compact. I spent 5-6 sentences explaining the whole premise. They used a familiar term and then just showed the angle, right? And so that's not necessarily directly transferable, but you saw that with startup investors who said, oh, we're Uber for groceries, or we're and so using a familiar thing to make yours more accessible is a totally okay thing to do. It might feel hacky. It might feel like you're dumbing something down. And I think that as someone who, I think you're trying to protect your idea, you might not be running it by a lot of people, so you don't have a lot of practice. That can actually create even more obstacles to getting the feedback necessary to be like, would they get it? Would they get it? Or am I making this too dumbed down or something like that? And so, I struggled with that, especially with marketing, because I like to try to sound smart. And I think that what you have to recognize is that when you're talking to a potential client, the goal is not to prove yourself. It's to express the value of the idea. And then over time, you can prove yourself. I mean, that's kind of how relationships work. It's about gaining trust over time and showing credibility over time. You're not going to do it with one conversation or by describing your idea in the smartest possible way. And so it's not really about dumbing down. It's about distilling something to its most essential core and its particular values. So, and by doing that, you're prioritizing the audience and really trying to kind of build that bridge as opposed to trying to impress. And I think that took years for me to kind of get over because I worried about, oh, I could say I'm smarter than this, or I feel silly saying the same thing over and over again. That's also something that I think a lot of people like. I'm tired of saying it this way, and it becomes actually no. Once you get it to the point where people's heads are nodding and they understand it right away, then you stay with it because that's kind of the core. And I think that that's Elliot, do you have something to say? Okay.
I don't see Elliot. Yeah, so
Yeah,
basic, is Elliot here? I know he said he was going to be here, but I love that, like making it as easily digestible for somebody as possible rather than trying to sort of glam it up, bells and whistles. Look how unique, original this is. None of that necessarily matters as much as it just being easily understood, easily
yeah,
comprehensible, easily sort of translatable for one, maybe like the marketing guy to tell the salesperson, rather than saying, the whole 5 sentences for speed, like you said, giving them it's Die Hard but on a bus. It's such an easier way for them to communicate the message that you're trying to send. I love that, Ben. That's great.
um, and so, all right, so we kind of talked about subject lines and making that introduction. And
Mhm.
so then the next goal would be describing your product, which I know that some people probably don't feel comfortable with, but
Right.
I would encourage you in every way to find someone you do trust, or, I don't know how this group works or things like that, but find someone to practice this with, kind of, just to even hear yourself saying it and kind of
Hmm.
see if it lands right, see if you can do it quickly, and figure out a way to talk about it, almost as if you would imagine somebody talking about it through word of mouth, like it was already out in the world and two friends were in a bar together. Oh,
Mm.
I just got this thing. Because what I've noticed between working in journalism, when as a journalist we would write about a watch or something like that, or as a marketer who works for that company selling it, people sense the bias right away. And they
Mm.
especially sense the bias when it's harder sell. But if you're talking about it as if you're a friend just saying, hey, I got this, streaming subscription and they got these great shows and this and that, talking about it that way, um, kind of disarms people,
Yeah.
because they sense that they're reacting to the enthusiasm, and they're reacting to how plain it is, as opposed to some slick kind of tagline, um, or kind of the extra hard sales, or even the jargon of an industry. So if you
Right.
can kind of keep it plain, that will help you.
Right. 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 Cal, did you
Uh,
want to pop in here? I see your hands raised, and then we'll get to Derek
Yes,
too.
yes. Uh, it's. I have a question about the matter we discussed just prior, about the idea of anchoring our product by comparing it with something else. What would
mhm.
be the protocol about using certain brand names or trademark uh, uh, names in our pitch? Let's say, so
Mm.
if I develop a little video or my sales sheet, can I go and say, well, let's say that I have two things that kind of snap together. Can I say this is like Legos for
Mm.
shoes, or Kleenex for
Yeah,
cars, or something like that?
yeah, whatever those things are, you could say, like, and putting them together is easy as putting together, it's as easy as a child putting together two pieces of Legos or something like that. You could say that, and it's not like a trademark thing, but it does. I think that's a great example where the more tangible you can make it, the more specific it is. um, you could say it's as easy as something abstract, and people are like, okay, I guess that's easy. But by creating that image of Legos or something like that, everybody knows what that is, and they know how simple it is. And so that, you're just by instinct, you kind of get the premise is that if you can find something specific that people are familiar with, that image will stick with them.
Right. My question was specific about what are the legalities about using this. So what we have here is a pitch to potential licensees. So it's not something that we published in a magazine or runs on TV or on the radio.
Yeah.
And because sometimes we see all trademarks are the owners or are property of the respective owners, that kind of disclaimers. Now, in a pitch or in a sales sheet, do we need to add that kind of small print, or because of the limited circulation, it can be a little less formal?
Yeah, I mean, this is conference room conversation. And I think that unless you are making a children's toy that looks like Legos and is doing this, using that term is, it doesn't seem like there's a conflict there. You're just using an analogy of how simple it is. And so I don't see any legal issue with that, no.
Okay, thank you.
And before we move on, I would like to just put that preface out there that we are not attorneys and to always consult your lawyer for legal advice. That's a great question, though, Cal. Thanks for bringing that up. Derek, do you want to pop on?
So Ben, you mentioned that the focus should be on selling the benefits of the product and not trying to convey how smart you are. So how do you balance that against trying to communicate that you've done your research and that you're someone that is familiar with the industry and someone to be taken seriously?
Yeah. So I think that that kind of leads into the hierarchy. Well, hold on. Let me pause first on selling the benefits of the product. I think that that's part of it's just another question I want to answer. I will get to kind of how to lay out that information and to show that you've done your research in a second. But it brought up that the benefits of the product are really a conversation with the consumer. I think that, and that's a conversation that you have to see, but there's a couple of different things going on with the concept of a product story. It's what change takes place for the consumer. Is it, that's why, say, before and after photos are still so popular, because they show the change that takes place. When a lot of marketers talk about storytelling, they're not talking about the origin of the story or how you came up with the idea or how long you've been researching it. It's just what change takes place. And I think that a lot of inventors and engineers think about problem and solution, which has that structure naturally, but to some degree, it's about the change that takes place. And so I think that main benefit, or whatever you're talking about, what the product does, you're in apparel. So I don't know if you're thinking about a particular trend, or if it's about durability, or if it's about waterproofing, or I can't necessarily speak to it, and I'm not expecting you to kind of explain it, but there's going to be a benefit that's different to the licensor than to the customer. And so, yes, you have to demonstrate value to the licensor about why people would want to buy it. And that would be the main benefit of the product. But where your intelligence comes across is in doing that homework of, let's say it's a new form of denim or something like that, like X amount of Americans, 200 million Americans bought a pair of jeans last year, and the average pair of jeans only lasts 6 months until something. You've done some research, and here's the product that can change that, or something like that. Now, I think that you can lead with research to kind of show the context of the value, and that shows you've done your homework. But then there's other research too about the comps in the industry. There's the manufacturing issues, what it would cost them, why it's not a risk. I think that if you do research, a major part should be, why it's not a huge risk for the licensor to assume, why it's not going to be a ton of headaches. And even if you had some argument like, I would launch this myself, but I just need this piece or something like that, and show kind of like, that could show kind of like how bought in to the idea you are, and how your partnership functions, and that you've even thought about the dynamic of your partnership with them. Or I see you excel, or you have the supply chain for X or something like that, and that's really why this partnership would work. And so I think that it's a warm introduction. It's a simple explanation about your product and the context for that. And then that third tier, if they're interested, kind of some backup. But at the same time, this is more of a trailer for a movie than it is the movie.
Mm-hmm.
What you're trying to do is just make them interested enough in the product and confident enough in you that they want to have that conversation. You don't need to tell them everything. And to some extent, you don't want to presuppose every question, because you do want to facilitate a conversation. And a lot of these people, they have pride or egos too. They want to be able to poke holes in it. They like that conversation. And you kind of want to invite it. And then when they have a tough question and you have the answer right there, that's where you show them how smart you are, that you can think on the fly, that yes, I've thought about that. And that's really where that trust starts to accumulate, and that credibility. And so the initial outreach isn't the whole story. It's just enough of a story to have a conversation. And then that's when you can gradually, over time, without forcing it, start to show them that you have done that research. Does that make sense? All right.
Yes, it does. Very satisfied with that answer.
Well, good.
Thank you, Derek. Great question. Cal? Don't forget to unmute yourself, my friend.
Sorry about that. For us as inventors wannabe, our communication is rather specific and a little bit limited, let's just say, in scope, at least in the beginning. So we have the email approach or the phone approach, and that's something that we have addressed already, and we talked about. The other big piece of copy that we're supposed to produce is the one page sales sheet.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I personally started, I'm actually in the process of doing this, so this seminar is very topical, at least for myself. Is the tone to strike in this communication. Most of the examples that I have seen really look like a flyer that I would put out for my customer, for the ultimate customer. However, I'm not really pitching to the customer. I'm pitching to a licensee. And I feel that I wonder how adequate would it be to actually tweak the tone of the sales sheet specifically to this potential licensee. Because if I talk to someone who's inside an industry, I could make reference to a product or an industry-specific process or a material that they are familiar with, and this is not something that would necessarily interest the ultimate consumer. So I think my question specifically to you is, do you think that would be appropriate in the way we communicate as inventors to structure it that way rather than directly to the consumer? And this same question kind of translates to the video that we're supposed to put together, which is pretty much a product illustration. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that and again, I don't know the best practices within the industry, but I think doing a one sheet that almost functions as highlights of a business plan of how you would run that business, what the startup costs would be, or, you know, as if they were an investor almost. But, you know, if you can do the research of like what it costs them to produce a unit of something comparable. I don't know if you can find those costs, but doing a one sheet as a business plan would certainly be worth trying. We're at a very interesting time now where there are a lot of three-tiered platforms, you know, where something like Facebook, right? There is the users that are one platform, but then they also sell to advertisers. Or you look at like a company like Klarna, right? That's a credit buy now, pay later company. And they will actually have a toggle. Are you a credit company or are you a customer? And you hit the toggle and the whole website changes. And so there are a lot of people who are creating messages that speak to the different people that are going to help their business run. With that said, I would absolutely try a one sheet as a business plan and see how that works with some people. But I would not do that in lieu of the product one, because even if you decide to use one more than the other, they're both an exercise that will help you to speak better for the other. And this kind of leads into a bigger conversation about AI. But I think that ultimately there are going to be questions that you can come up with, or I'm sorry, I got distracted by the notes. There are shortcuts that you can come up with once you've locked down your plan. But going through the exercise and really thinking about how you're going to communicate it and being intentional about that allows you to use tools down the line that create shortcuts with a greater sense of control. It's not just a Ouija board where you're like, oh, it says this, I guess I'll use that. And so by actually creating a product kind of flyer one sheet, you're doing the thinking that will help you answer questions to a customer about how you see it being marketed. And if you build the business plan, you're kind of coming up with the shorthand answers for how you would answer questions on the fly when you get in the room with someone. And I think that doing those, even if they only end up as exercises, will infinitely help you communicate your brand on the fly, because that becomes a part of it. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
it's a really unique take on that, Ben, that I don't think any of us have maybe considered doing. Like, there's the concept of using a second comparison chart, like a second sheet that's like a comparison chart, making it very clear how your product stacks up to the others that are already on the market. There's the pitch deck option that in some categories is more part of the norm, say in the medical field. It seems like that's usually more desired. Also in the toy and game industry, people are typically going in that direction as well. Elliot has mentioned in the chat that he used a pro forma invoice for that reason. I don't know what that means. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Ben, but Elliot,
no.
I
would love to know about it though.
Yeah, Elliot,
and what the reason was. I love logic, so I'd love to.
I know Elliot is working on some illustrations at the moment, so I don't know if he'll be able to chime in, but we are all ears if you're willing, Elliot.
Sure,
Ben, I don't know.
You can hear me.
We hear you, Elliot.
We got you.
Sure. All right. Well, thanks. I just wanted to share that with the group, just because the conversation was going in the direction of how much does it cost, because my product is a luxury product and there are quite a number of components. That being said, you know, I think that I agree with the invent right approach, saying, you know, my prototyping costs are not exactly what the manufacturing costs are going to be.
Yeah.
And preface that, but a pro forma invoice is essentially a breakdown of the goods within a product. And when you, when I've dealt with many companies, specifically in China for manufacturing and in the US, and they're going to want to present a pro forma invoice so that you can determine if you would like to purchase or not. There are many different types, and you can redact as much information as you want. So essentially, you're giving them a ballpark figure with ballpark elements within your ballpark components.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of have an overview of what exactly they're getting from a technical standpoint. And then the other thing that I think is important is if you're after the pull-through marketing,
Mm-hmm.
and you know you're sharing, you may want to share that with manufacturers as well, which is a pre-order form. So essentially, you're trying to get pre-orders for your manufacturer, and by showing the pre-order form to the manufacturer, you can have a better dialogue and get more feedback about, you know, what it takes to get it across the line so that their clients might be interested. So that feedback is really important, and those two other, you know, components really lead into what how the conversation was going about, you know, doing as much as you can, right? Doing as much as you can to show that you've already done your homework and that you are a team player, that you're a partner.
Mm-hmm.
Right, you're taking
it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Elliot, I think there's also a great subtext in that you know, I think that more and more people are valuing transparency or becoming very savvy or skeptical about those who aren't.
And we should be.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And so I think that by showing them that in the process and showing that that's a consideration, that it kind of shows that your current investment and investment of thought, and that you're not trying to offload an idea and not kind of that you've thought it all the way through, and that and so I think that that's an important element too. And I think that goes into what I would say is kind of the third tier substantiation. So Les kind of had asked about this sales principle of attention, interest, desire, and action. And I think that, you know, in an online context, when you're laying out a website, for instance, you know, the hero headline, the top headline is about getting attention. Usually underneath that is a set of what would be considered benefits, or sometimes they're called USP, unique selling points. And what you'll normally see is like a headline and then like three little boxes of text that show kind of the benefits. And then there might be like a series of 50-50 kind of things where it's like showing happy customers or testimonials. And then at the bottom is, you know, order now. And that's the action component. And that's kind of become a boilerplate way to lay out a website. And you can certainly lay out an email that way. I think that it's a helpful structure. So thank you for sharing it, Celeste. I think that when you're kind of in the market for a business partner, it's like, where does due diligence fall into the attention, interest, desire kind of thing? And so maybe the interest section, it becomes, yeah, sure. First paragraph is about explaining your product and trying to gain attention about that. And the interest would be explaining some of these, some of kind of the more logistical aspects of how this would work. And like Elliot mentioned, kind of the specs or what would really go into it. And then I don't think that the desire and action, I think that it's okay to ask at the end for a chance to talk, or to show your availability, and to kind of prompt a person to say, I would like to talk to you about this. And even if you're at an early stage, if only to get your feedback, or if only to, because even if you're humble about it, I don't think anybody's ever been like, oh, this person's has humility, I don't take them seriously. I think that there's a fear that, oh, like maybe they won't take me as seriously if I don't have full confidence all the time. But your real goal is to get in the room with them, or get on a call with them, and go from there. So I think that yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so yes, Celeste, you were asking about the first contact isn't about discussing costs. I think that it isn't, but you can mention, I've outlined the costs for this if you'd like to know more about them, or something like that. I do think that showing in some way, or even nodding towards the due diligence that you've done, and the market research that you've done, is helpful to prompt that next conversation.
Ben,
so,
we are on the hour
yeah.
here, and I want to try to not necessarily wrap up, because I know we've like barely scraped the surface of this, but can we maybe just touch on like more like some specific copywriting tips? I know Celeste has asked about that, and also Cal has asked about maybe resources, but I don't know if you wanted to pull up one of those examples, if you have a chance to look at one of those, or
I think it's the perfect time. So I can share that screen.
Take a few more minutes and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you shared this with me as an example of kind of a person describing what they do, and you admitted to me that it kind of fell flat for you. And from a design standpoint, I think that you have kind of you're an artistic eye, and so that kind of hits you. And I kind of wanted to explain from a copy standpoint, where I think this kind of undermines the designer's efforts. I'll read it real quick. It says, "Hello, everyone. I'm an interior decorator and professional organizer with a passion for transforming spaces into harmonious environments that reflect both style and functionality. With a keen eye for design and a knack for maximizing space efficiency, I specialize in creating personalized solutions that cater to my clients' unique needs and preferences."
Do you want to also pop up the flyer with it to show the visual?
I kind of want to I kind of want to run through the text first, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So hello everyone. I am an interior decorator and professional organizer with a passion for transforming spaces into harmonious environments that reflect both style and functionality. So here she's talking about herself, and this kind of ties into the idea of wanting to prove herself, as opposed to talking about what she does, what service she's really providing. And then again, it continues with a keen eye for design, style, and with a keen eye and a knack for maximizing space efficiency. So she's kind of talking about how these skills would benefit a customer, but she's still kind of talking about her passion and her talent, as opposed to, and the customer is only obliquely getting those fringe benefits of her expertise. And then again, it's still about her. I specialize in creating personalized solutions. Again, personalized solutions, transforming spaces, they're all kind of abstract. They're not like the Lego that that was brought up. You can't necessarily see a personalized solution. You can't really see maximizing space. I mean, you can see an empty room. And so where this could have benefited was by creating an image, you know, a living space where you're not tripping over your kids' book bags, and part of the problem there is that she is trying to address everyone. And so I think that in your process, think about who is your one specific top client. I think people are hesitant to do that because they think, if I get super specific with my messaging, people will think, oh, that's not for me, and you'll actually lose an audience. But if I say, you know, design a living space where you're not tripping over your kids' book bags, nobody who's not a parent is going to be like, oh, well, she only designs for parents. You know, there are other things to trip over that people would actually create a substitute for. But having that image of kind of everyone can relate to kind of having to walk around a certain way because there's stuff in the way, or there's a pile of clothes or something like that. In the much smaller print here, she says, where the artistry of expert interior decorating meets the precision of organizing. Unleash the full potential of your home as we create personalized designs that reflect your unique style with professional organization that bring order and harmony to every corner. I would, as a rule, it does seem that people really like the idea of something meeting something else, or a company is, we're at the intersection of blank and blank. And that's really a grammar thing, is they want to say that they're more than one thing. They don't want to have to give up saying one or the other. So it's at the intersection, or it's meets this, or captures both. And what it does is it forces a reader to think of two things at once. And it becomes a little overwhelming, especially first touch. It also means that this person, I would suspect this person is still in the early stages of their career and hasn't found a target audience, or hasn't found a clientele, and is fishing a little bit and is trying to appeal to everyone. And that's the sense that I get, because the very vague language, the attempt to try to talk about style and organization and efficiency, and she's kind of crowding in as opposed to kind of focusing on one. And I think that if she were to kind of lead with organization, or style, you know, I think that by doing both, she's cluttering her message, and she's used these hashtags to try to kind of fish as well. If you really know your audience, you don't need, you know, 6 or 7 hashtags. And so she really is kind of prospecting and trying to figure it out as she go. And I'm not faulting her for that, but I do think that it undermines her message.
I'll also note too that those hashtags are like only 2 of them have followings. The other hashtags have no followings, so they're basically useless. On top
Now,
of the image just being extremely chaotic and cluttered in itself, so it's not quite the message I think she wants to send.
Hold on, there's some more. Yep. So there was some, I guess, one sheets that clients sold. Is there one that I could use from that?
Yeah,
That
you can do the under presentation, there's that one. I screenshot, yeah, that one, or temp image.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
do this one. Now, I think that in a lot of ways, this is stronger than the interior designer,
Mhm.
because it clearly says what the product is and what it does.
Mhm.
And a person who is interested in this will get it. You know, Jennifer might have some notes on the design.
Mhm.
I think that what I would encourage, the creator of this to ask, and I don't have the answer to these questions, is who, I can't necessarily get a gauge of who the customer is. Is this guy the customer? Are these survivalists? Are they campers? Are they people who know what a furrow rod tip is? Like,
Mhm.
because I don't know that information personally. If there is a niche of, if there's a niche of customers who are looking for a good furrow rod tip, then you're speaking to them, but I don't know. And so I think that this is a very strong foundation.
Mhm.
It becomes, as Celeste kind of mentioned in the note, now what's in it for the customer is, if this are people going camping, it's about, what is the, you've probably demoed this. How fast can you start a fire?
Mm.
Is it 2 minutes?
Mhm.
Get your fire started in under 2 minutes so that you can break out the s'mores faster, or whatever it might be, but place them in the situation. Right now, this feels kind of like a demo. I don't know kind of the use case or anything like that. And I think that that's where this could, I think it functions perfectly well, and anybody who's interested in this would get it and be
Right.
interested. It becomes working towards an art, kind of refining it more would be giving the use case and really anchoring the visuals and around that use case so that people could picture themselves in this situation and understand how useful it is. You see that with electronic flat tire pumps, right? It doesn't take, I'm not a mechanic. You guys, I don't know how into cars you are, but you see a demo, someone's at the side of the road and they pump up their tire in 10 minutes. You get that. You understand the value of it, whether you buy one or not, but you understand the value. And so I would try to find maybe some version of the situation that this
Mm.
occurs in most for your customers.
Okay, that's helpful. Wolfie, what is your question?
Well, I noticed in the pitch statement, it sounds almost like the mission statement of some international, multinational corporation. And there are a lot of big words in there. And what I've read sometime long ago from Winston Churchill is when he did his famous very short victory speech, he looked for the shortest possible words he could use. And they all tended to be not Latin rooted. They
Okay.
all used to be 1/3 the length of the Latin rooted equivalents. And there was only one word, which I think was we will not surrender, which he couldn't find a replacement for. But so I use that as a rule to just find the shortest possible equivalence. That's all.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Wolfie. Yeah, Ben, we had talked about that a little bit too, right? How important is it to keep it super tight, super, do we want to keep all the copy as short as possible with today's attention span being like the TikTok generation? So you have 2 seconds, or is there flexibility there?
Yeah, I think that there's one of my there's a famous saying about it that people don't read things that are short, they read things that are interesting. And so it really becomes about how you structure this. And I don't think that a universal rule about shortness is something to paint yourself into a corner about. I do think that there is certainly a psychological component that when a person opens up an email and they have to scroll to get to see the bottom of it, there is like I need to deal with this later. Same thing with giant paragraphs and things like that. So I think that there are some obvious things, but I've noticed recently when I post on social media, it's the things that I wrote for myself that were kind of personal but longer that have actually gotten some of the biggest responses, and some of the shorter things I think can come off, especially in the way people are talking. Sometimes short just means glib, or I don't have time for this either. And so I think that you have to balance out that, no, I care about this enough, I've invested enough that I want to tell you about this. And so you have to kind of find that balance. I don't think it would serve you well to give a kind of one size fits all answer of short good, long bad.
We are well over the hour at this point, and I know, again, Ben, we've like barely scraped the surface. By the way, Wolfie, thank you for that input. That was very interesting as usual. But I'm wondering if anyone has any last minute questions before we wrap this up. I'm gonna see maybe, Ben, if you could send some resources my way, and I'll post it to our group for people that want to learn more.
Yeah, and if you want to, as a follow-up, I don't know how you communicate, but if you want to include my email or my LinkedIn or something like that, anyone, feel free to reach out. I tend to be a long talker. So, if we haven't gotten to something, I showed up to be helpful, and I'm happy to honor that in the next couple of weeks. Just reach out, feel free.
Yeah, we might have to do a round 2 and maybe do some more live edits. I don't know if anyone else has maybe sell sheets or products that have already hit the market that you'd want to volunteer. We could take a look at those. I'm assuming that you're already on board, Ben. Thank you for that. Thank you in advance. But if nobody else has any other questions, let's see. Let's just go ahead and try to wrap this up, since again we are well over the hour, and I know it's very late for some of us. And okay, so we'll start with thank you. Big surprise there, but thanks, Ben. Just heartfelt thank you on behalf of the Innovators Roundtable and myself personally. We're so grateful for the wisdom and insights that you've shared with us tonight. So having you as part of my personal journey over the past 2 decades has been nothing short of transformative. You've guided me through countless essays and cover letters and pivotal communications, and have really profoundly impacted my path. I wouldn't be where I am without you. So thank you so much for all of your support and for being here with us tonight. No, thank you. I'm sure you've enlightened many of us. So again, thank you so much. And I do apologize in advance if your inbox becomes full after this conversation, but that's what you get for being part of the community. And if anyone's interested, you can definitely check out his work. Ben is a comedy writer, amongst other things, and his more recent works have had me screaming out loud in laughter, particularly the Amazon peeing in jars article. So you can read that at MrBenCake.com.
Yep.
I think, right. Okay. So you can find that there. And so turning really quickly, we're going to wrap up just a couple updates for the Innovators Roundtable sessions. Our next gathering will be a coffee and catch up, and that's going to be Thursday, April 4th. Many of us are back from various trade shows, myself including. I was just at the Global Pet Expo, and I'm still so excited that I had to have my little badge on tonight. Others are coming back from home and hardware shows and others. So this session and on the 4th is going to have that same open chat, open forum, but we're going to focus on sharing some of our experiences from the trade shows, things that we maybe would do differently next time, some of our takeaways, some of the things that we would do again. So you definitely don't want to miss that. Additionally, I am also considering shifting our session starting time from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If that works for you, if it doesn't work for you, I would love your feedback. Please let me know. Also, again, to our international community, it has been a hectic month. I have not forgotten you, and I am still trying to plan out a great time that's going to be more convenient for you all to meet as a group. So stay tuned for that. I promise it's coming. Speaking of upcoming sessions, our April guest speakers are still being finalized, but I promise you it's going to be very exciting. I have a few people working out the details, and it should be really enriching and beneficial for everybody. So keep an eye out for that. And a gentle reminder, the Innovators Roundtable, the LinkedIn page does not always send the notifications. So if you want to stay in the loop, please make a habit of checking back onto the page and finding the details you need. You can also check my LinkedIn profile. I typically share the same information on both. So lastly, if you'd like to show appreciation for any of our speakers, present, past, future, go ahead, hit their LinkedIn endorsement section. It's a small, quick, easy way to show thanks for their participation in our community. So with that, I want to thank all of you again for being part of this conversation tonight. Thank you again to Ben Cake for being here, taking the time out of your very busy schedule and sharing your information with us. Again, I know we barely scraped the surface, so maybe they'll be around too, and we'll do some more digging and some more, break out that red marker and start Xing some lines out and putting in some new copy. But with that, I wish you all a really wonderful night, and I will hopefully see you again next week. So thanks everybody, and take good care. Bye, Shad. Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank
That
you
was a
again.
great first
Thanks,
meeting.
Gar.
Good job.
Thank you, Wesley. Thanks for being here, Cal. Thanks for your participation. Really appreciate it. Thanks again, Derek. It was great to have you. And Elliot, I know, is there. Celeste was here. I don't know. I lost the participations. I think that's it. All right, everybody. It's a wrap. Thank you again. I will hopefully see you next week. Any questions? You know how to reach me.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Thanks, Derek. Bye, everybody.